Hello everyone, as we are going to be start the next chapter, that is nothing but the coordination, the linking system. As you know that to perform any activity in general, if you want to walk, if you want to talk, or if you want to run, if you want to sit, if you want to eat, in general any activity you perform that needs the coordination. Okay now, so this coordination system includes the two systems of your body, that is the nervous system and the endocrine system. So the nervous system consisting of CNS, PNS, ANS, as you know. So CNS is nothing but the brain and the spinal cord. PNS is nothing but the cranial nerves, spinal nerves, and the nerves which are arises from the either side of the spinal cord. The next thing is the ANS. ANS is consisting of the sympathetic nerves and the parasympathetic nerves. And the coordination, the linking system includes the endocrine system as well. The endocrine system is constituted of the pituitary gland, that is known to be as the master gland of your body, and which controls the all other glands of the body that control the all systems of body. Even we are feeling hungry, or even we are fearing, or we are need to be fight, or whatever the conditions are there, these all are under control of the endocrine system. Okay now, these both systems together coordinate and make the survival of life is very easy. Now the next thing is, what is the important concept in this chapter? The chapter importance I have right here, that you need to be aware of all these systems, and especially the brain and structure, and especially the Galen's conclusion. So as we learned a story about the Galen, the fellow fallen down from the chariot, and he complained the swelling over the neck. Then the Galen confirms that we have two types of the nerves. Those are nothing but the one is the sensory nerves that take the information from the sense organs to the brain, and the next is the motor nerves that takes the order from the brain to the all parts of the body. So we need to be aware of the structure of these both nerves that is given in the textbook. Now the next thing is synapse. It is really very important. So you can see that wherever I star marked upon the board, that is really the important thing, you need to be aware of it. If you are lacking to be understand complete here, why? Because we are not going into depth, then you can just follow it from the textbook. Synapse is nothing but a gap between the two nerve cells. Either it is present in between the dendrites or the axon, or the axon or the axon. So this gap helps the pass the information in the form of electrical impulses or in the form of the chemical impulses. Okay now, so be aware of it. Now once you see the structure of the brain, the structure of the brain is really very important. Its parts really very important, and as well as the functions of each part of the brain is really very important. So structure of the brain includes the forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. Forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. The forebrain consisting of two main lobes, and it has a four sublobes. Thus you can see the parietal lobe, and the occipital lobe, temporal lobe, and the frontal lobe. They all do work together. Okay now, it has the two main lobes that is known to be as the hemispheres. Okay, so these hemispheres are the sheet for the complete intelligence. So how we talk, how we speak, what is our perceptions, how we learn the language, what is our intelligence, this all are comes under the part of this brain. Okay now, if you can see, it is known to be as the galleys and the cells in here, so which make their design when we learn something new every time. Now the next is this part is known to be as the cerebellum. Okay now, so whether this hemisphere is nothing but the cerebrum, that is the first hindbrain, and just behind of it, in between, the diencephalon also present, that is also the part of the forebrain itself. So that is also very important. It has the 5 main functions that you need to be learned. Okay now, it completely talk about our health issues, and as well as our anger emotions, and as well as our muscles contraction as well. Okay, next thing, as you see, it is known to be as the stem of the brain. Okay, this stem of the brain ends with the spinal cord within the vertebral column. So this is nothing but the spinal cord. Now the next thing is, this spinal cord is also part of the CNS. So now here you can see the inside of the spinal cord. The inside of the spinal cord, here see that the gray matter is inside and the white matter is outside. Reverse of it, within the brain, the white matter present inside and the gray matter present towards the periphery. That is due to the presence of the blood capillaries. So this is about the structure of the brain that you need to be learn, and structure and functions. Why? Because many of the time this will ask that what is the structure of the which structure of the brain or which part of the brain can capable to make the body posture, balancing of the body posture, or mainly the autonomous nervous system, that is control along with the medulla oblongata, control the breath in a heartbeat and the breathing rate, and that is related to the brain dead also. So you need to be aware of this as well. Now the next important thing in this chapter is the reflex arc or the reflex action. The sudden spontaneous actions, involuntary action that we perform, that is known to be as the reflex arc or the reflex action. The pathway of the reflex action is nothing but the reflex arc. So you have to be draw the structure of the spinal cord, and you need to be draw the two nerves that indicates the sensory nerves, motor nerves, and you have to be represent it as a reflex arc, and you have to explain that what they carry the information, that is the reflex action. Now the next important thing in this chapter is the hormone in the plants. That is also very important. The plants hormones are the abscisic acid, auxin, cytokinin, sertraline, and the gibberellins. So their functions also you need to be learn about. And we have a next important topic within this chapter. There is the tropic and the Gnostic movements. As you know, the tropic movements, many of the time you have written in the examination, mainly the turning towards the light. The movement of the plants or the growth of the shoot tips towards the light is nothing but the phototropism. Upon it, we have an activity 5 in the textbook, and Charles Darwin and Francis Darwin have conducted the experiments over there, and W.F. Wendt also conducted the experiment over there to explain that whether the bending of the plant body is due to the hormone or due to the light. So both of the experiments you need to be learn and aware of it. And the next thing is very simple thing, the chemotropism and the hydrotropism and the geotropism, positive geotropism and the negative geotropism. So these things also you need to be aware of it. So I'm going to be conclude here this chapter. So these are the things that you need to be remembering very clearly. And next thing, the parts and functions of the brain is really very important. Go through it. Then here it is the importance. So learn very well. Okay, hello students. As you know that chapter wise some of the important questions we are going to be discussed. Now this is the chapter 6 that I have taken here, that is nothing but the reproductive system or the reproduction, that is nothing but the generating system, that the new young ones are going to be generated. As you know that to continue the life within the planet Earth, this system is acquired in the essential. As you know that it has the two modes, that is the asexual one and the sexual one, that we will discuss. The asexual mode of the reproduction is nothing but where is the only single parent is involved, and it has the various types according to the habitat of the organism, according to the type of the body of the organism, whether it is very simpler living organism or it is a very complex living organisms like us or the like plants. Now here you can see the fission. It is the first thing which takes place with the very simple organisms like the bacteria and the worms, etc. Next thing is the building, that is takes place within the yeast. The next thing is the fragmentation that we will find within the very primitive level of the organisms like the fungi, and algae are the more important, and the main example for this is the Spirogyra. And the next thing is the parthenogenesis and the parthenocarpy. As you see that I have written together, why? Because many of the times in examination point of view, the differences we ask in between the fragmentation and regeneration and parthenogenesis and the parthenocarpy. So let's have this here in the fission. Many of the times that we make the curd, then what's the reason that we make the milk warm, then we can capable to get the actual curd within a less time. So what's the reason behind that? So most of the time that reason will ask in the examination. So the reason is the multiple fission. Why? Because some of the times when bacteria get the unfavorable conditions, during that what happen, they form a cyst around us. So in that cyst they get multiplied, they divide, multiply. So within a short time they can make the major colony of the bacteria. So that's the reason that we warm the milk, so to get the quick curd. Now the next is the budding. Budding is nothing but the bird cell arises over the cell's body, that is the yeast example. Now fragmentation, the fragment, the name itself saying that whenever the one scale or the one body of a Spirogyra break down, then each one can capable to grow into a new individual. That is, it happens within a very primitive level of the organism. What is the slight difference here? The fragmentation takes place in a very low level of the organisms, and the regeneration, some of the complex organisms, as for example lizards, and the next is the planaria. Do you know, if we cut the planaria body into the 32 parts, and then each part can capable to grow into a new one. Now the next is the parthenogenesis, parthenocarpy. One of the what we have to say that one of the modern method that we can get the seedless fruits due to this one, parthenocarpy. We can get the seedless fruits. Nowadays you may eat a pomegranate or the grapes and watermelon which contains no seeds with it. Okay, no? So that's the reason. In that what happened? The fruit is going to be formed with the unfertilized zygote. Okay, no? So that's the parthenocarpy. Now the next focus important in the chapter is the vegetative propagation. That is the natural one and the artificial one. Natural one, as you know, that it can be accessed by the leaves and the stems and as well as the roots. Now the next thing is the artificial one. Artificial one is very important. This natural one, it gives the figures in the end, will ask in the MCQs most of the times. But the artificial, in artificial this grafting, the third one is most important. Why? Because many of the time the question has been asked in the question papers that how can we get our desirable fruit? So that reason is the grafting. Here what we do, we select the two plants that we need. For example, two mango plants are there. One has the larger in size but sour in taste, and the other one is the sweet in taste but the small in size. But our desire is to take a plant or a mango which has the bigger in size and the sweeter in taste. So we can get it by the grafting. Now the next thing is in the vegetative propagation also. Here it is a modern artificial vegetative propagation is there. That is the tissue culture. So this here is the tissue culture. So you can see here that we can select any part of the plant body and we can take into the sterilization. So we will take it into the growth medium. Then we will add the growth hormones there. Then what happens, that the small content of the plant can capable to grow an embryo, and that embryo give rise to a new plant. So this is the new modern technique that within a short time we can get the thousands of the plants. Okay. So now the next thing is very important in this chapter, the several times. I think so that they can't make the question paper by not adding that question from this concept of the chapter. That is the structure of the flower and the double fertilization in the flowering plants. If you know the structure of the flowers, you must have to know that the two main parts of the flower, that is the androecium and the gynoecium, the stamens and the ova. Okay, so here what happens, double fertilization means, so you must be aware of the structure of the embryo that contains the 7 cells and the 8 nucleus. Okay, you need to be aware of it. 7 cells and the 8 nucleus. So in this one, the center cell which is present within the embryo, it contains the 2 nucleus which is known to be as the binary nucleus. So what happened, whenever the stigma is there and the pollen can falls over it, then it contains the 2 nucleus within it. One nucleus gets fused with the egg cell and the next one gets fused with the fusion cell. So this is called as the double fertilization within the flowering plant. So you need to be aware of this concept as well. Now the next important thing in this chapter is the cell division. So the cell division consisting of the mitosis and meiosis. So several time asking question is regarding to the meiosis. What happens if there is no meiosis? What kind of the generation will be there if no meiosis? Can we able to examine the variations within the new organisms, new unborns without meiosis? So this kinds of the questions most of the time will ask in the examination. So you need to be aware of it. So mitosis. So Mitosis takes place for the asexual type of the reproduction, and the meiosis takes place for the sexual type of the reproduction. Why? Because here the genetic material exchange occur during the meiosis, so that creates the variations, and these variations are necessary for the flow of evolution. Now here see the mitosis types. Okay, now the mitosis having the four main steps, that is the prophase, metaphase, anaphase and telophase. So prophase, you can see the early stages of the prophase given, that all the genetic material combined together and becomes thick and longitudinally split and attached with the centromere. Okay, and this centromere you can see, and they longitudinally divided and they becomes thicker. This is the first phase, that is the prophase. And during the metaphase, what happened? They all come together and aligned over it here. Okay, now so during the late metaphase only, what happens? There is a centromeres. They forms the spindle here and they attach over the line of this spindle. Okay. During the anaphase, what happened? They split from the centromere and they move towards the respective poles. Now, at last, what happens? During the telophase, they forms a nucleus. Okay. So, and the next what happened? The nuclear membrane is going to be formed and the cell membrane is going to be formed. So that's the end of the mitosis. So what is meiosis? Meiosis have the two steps mainly here. What are those two steps? It has a prophase 1, metaphase 1, telophase 1 and the anaphase 1. And after that again prophase 2, metaphase 2, telophase 2 and the anaphase 2. So what is the little difference here? That is the prophase. Prophase of the meiosis is lengthier than compared to the prophase of the metaphase. Why? Because during the meiosis, this is the main difference. Most of the times we'll ask in the examination what is the main difference of it, or what causes the differentiation or the variations within the young ones in the meiosis. The difference is that during the prophase, the tetrage formation occur within the prophase, then after that overlapping of the chromosomes occur, then may exchange the genetic material that may cause the new variations within the new young ones of the individual. So this is about the importance of this chapter, and the next I am going to be end this one. So go through the last page of the chapter and as well as the embryonic membrane. That is also one of the important question. Now we are going to be end this chapter. Okay, ma. Yes, hello students, as we are going by chapter wise importance. So the first thing that I want to remind you once again, that you habituate to this thing, that is the I can. If you understand that I can, then you definitely can able to do. If you have a confidence, then you can capable to do anything. So have a confidence. Why? Because already the learned concepts are there and the already discussed concepts are there, and most of it that you have written the examinations most of the times. So I am going to add the motivation here, that it's going to be a very very simple chapter, and many of the things regarding to this chapter we have discussed in the first chapter as well. So all my dear students, as you see, this is the coordination in life processes. Actually, when we learned the fifth chapter, the fifth chapter regarding to the coordination, there we understood that every system is linked with each other. Either it is a nervous system which is linked with the endocrine system, and as well as the nervous system is the thing which can capable to make us to feel hunger as well, and as well as this nervous system is only the system, and along with the endocrine system manage the heartbeat and manage the breathing rate, manage the blood pressure. So these all things interconnected with each other, even though the excretory system connected to the transportation system connected to the digestive system connected to the nervous system. So like this, every system of the body has the coordination within it, so that we can able to survive on a better way. So here we are going to be discuss the coordination, mainly the coordination of the digestive system along with the nervous system. Okay, and in this chapter the main thing is you need to be focused that many of the times asked a question, that is the enteric nervous system. What does mean by this enteric nervous system? Actually, the enteric nervous system is nothing but the digestive system. Okay, now actually this digestive system is the very vast system in our body, and the alimentary canal itself has the more number of the neurons than compared to the peripheral nervous system. So you might have idea that nervous system we have split it into the 2 or 3. That is the CNS, PNS and the ANS. So CNS is the brain and the spinal cord, and PNS is nothing but the nerves which are arises from the spinal cord and the brain. So within this digestive canal or the alimentary canal, the more number of the more number of the neurons or the nerve cells present than compared to the peripheral nervous system. So that's why this is known to be as the enteric nervous system. Why? Because it need to be give the response to the many of the physiochemical atoms which are going to be enter in our alimentary canal, and it need to be defeat. It need to be give response to the certain outer foreigner bacteria and the viruses that will attack to our body. So, and the next thing is it must participate in the absorption of the food, the complete assimilation of the food within the small intestine. And not only this, it must be helpful for the requirement of the this amylase and the bile juice and the insulin that comes from the pancreas. So this all things are going to be deal with this digestive system, so that it is known to be as the enteric nervous system. And we think that it may be can done by the alimentary canal itself. So many of the things can be done by the alimentary canal itself. It do also, but it can't able to make any kind of the decisions. Okay, now the decision making is our first brain that is present in our skull. It's only give the responses, and it helpful itself to be continue to the digestion and the absorption of the food. Now the next thing very important in this, that how can we able to feel hunger? It is most of the time asking question, and as well as this the relation in between the leptin and ghrelin, it is also most of the times asking question. So how the hunger generate? This is very important. Usually what happens when we do any physical activity, we feel tired. Actually on that time what happens, now whatever the glucose present in our body, whatever the proteins, nutrients that we have been taken, they get broken down and they utilize to generate the body heat that gives us energy to perform the physical activities. So here, how do we feel hunger? So when the glucose level go down into our blood, right, the signals reaches to the brain, and the brain gives the signal to this stomach with the help of the 10th vagus nerve. It is known to be as the, most of the time in the MCQs, one more question, the 10th vagus nerve, its function also may ask, so you need to remember it. So this 10th vagus nerve bring the information to the walls of the stomach, so they starts to contract and relax. That is known to be as the hunger pangs. That is happens due to the releasing of a kind of the hormone, that is the ghrelin hormone. So whenever the ghrelin hormone release in our stomach, then the hunger pangs start that make us to feel to consume some food. So that is the hunger generation. That is the way of generating of the hungers. And most of the times, what are the things that make us to feel appetite? So that is nothing but the smell of the food as well, and thought of the food as well. And when we are going to be see something delicious, that is also affect our appetite. So these things also affect our appetite, and mostly whenever it's asked in the question that when the hunger is going to be generated, then you have to come along with the fallen of the glucose level within the blood. Now the next thing very important, that the relation in between the leptin and ghrelin. Think that is really very important. What is the function of the ghrelin we discussed, and what is the function of the leptin we need to be discussed. If we intake the proper amount of the food, then we feel it's enough to us. What's the reason that what make us to feel suppressed, or what make us to feel now the taking of the food is enough? That is due to the leptic hormone. Okay, now so leptin hormone. So this both are going to be occurs in our stomach, get released in our stomach to make us to eat and to make us to feel like the taking of the food is enough. Now the next very important is that taste and the smell are closely related. It is really very important and very easy as well. Why? Because you have it in the 9th standard also, how they are interrelated. Why? Because here we can see that whenever we are going to be eat the food, first we check the smell. Isn't if the smell going to be focused upon our brain, or we like the smell, then we wanted to eat the food as well. So here the taste and smell are correlated. Actually, what we recognize, that how can we recognize the taste of the food? Actually, we not recognize the taste of the food, we recognize the flavor of the food. We might have listened what is the flavor of that dish, what is the flavor of the ice cream, or what is the flavor of so and so dish. So actually flavors attracts us more than the smell. So whenever we get the cough and cold, what happens? Our internal nose is going to be blocked. So what happened? We unable to get the smell of it. Now here you need to be explained that how do we able to taste the food and how can we able to smell the things. So what is the, how can we smell? Usually whenever we smell something, then the air bonded chemicals which are present in that particular flavor enters into the nasal cavity, and the nasal cavity have the mucus within it, and these chemicals, airborne chemicals, are going to be mixed with that airborne mucus, dissolved within it. Then afterwards there is a nerves. The nerves which arises from this nasal cavity to the brain, they take the information to the brain. Then the brain can able to recognize that what kind of the smell it is or what kind of the flavor it contains. In case if we already smelled that food, then the smell is already present in our brain, we easily recognize that it the so and so kind of the food is that. On the same way, how can we able to taste the food? Here also we need to be aware of that our tongue have the taste buds, very very small taste buds, papillae, okay na? So which contains the detectors, gustatory detectors. So this gustatory detectors responsible to detect the chemicals which is present in that so and so food and send the information to the brain. So like that their intent occurs, means the smell and the food taste is going to be mixed together, and our brain say that what kind of food is there. So tasting of the food is a one way and the smelling of the food is a one way, okay. So the both are interconnected and interrelated to this. Because of no space, I didn't draw on the complete flow chart that explain about the taste and the smell. So that it is given in the textbook. So once go through that flow chart, where you can comes to know that brain, nose and the tongue are related to make us to feel the taste of any kind of the food. Now the next thing is buccal cavity dentition. So as you know that the dentition is always a 1 mark or half mark or 2 mark question that usually ask. You might have written in the grand test that 2123 by 2123. What is this 2123 by 2123 is nothing but the formula, our formula. Which formula? Dental formula. That we have the incisors, canines, premolars and molars. Incisors help us to chewing the food. Here you can see the diagram that here we have this part is the incisors, then canines, then molars, then premolars. Okay na? Incisors, canines, premolars and molars. Incisors make us to cut the food and canines make us to chew the food, and molars and premolars make us to chip the food properly, and as well as make us to mix the food properly with the saliva with the help of the tongue and the lower jaw and the upper palate as well. So this whole process is known to be as the mastication. So mastication is one of the very very important thing that usually ask in the examination. Along with mastication, you don't forget about the role of saliva. Okay, role of saliva. It is related to first chapter and as well as the 7th chapter. Why? Because the saliva helpful in the mastication, so we need to be aware of it. What the saliva do, that it contains an enzyme that is called as the amylase, which acts over the carbohydrates and turns them into maltose. Or here we can say that it capable to convert the complex food components into the simpler food components. Now the next very very important thing of this chapter is this diagram. Okay. Many of the time this diagram given examination will ask to point out that what is this, and most of the time it asks about the peristaltic movement within the esophagus, or the question will be asked like this, that how the food can able to pass from the mouth to the esophagus to the stomach. So the answer is the walls of this esophagus is made up of two kinds of the muscles. So those two kinds of the muscles are known to be as the circular muscles and the longitudinal muscles. Here we need to be aware of the function of it. Here you can see I have just written the epiglottics. Why? Because it is also one of the important thing here. And you can see here it is the bolus and here it is the stomach, and this inside the stomach is the chyme, that is it chyme, which is acidic in nature. Now we will come from the starting that what is this epiglottics? Epiglottics is a valve, or in a simple words for your understanding, I was said to that the epiglottics plays the role as a door in between the food pipe and the air pipe. Okay, now it plays the role of the door in between the food pipe and the door pipe. So whenever we are going to be breathe, it covers the food pipe. Okay, now, and whenever we are going to be mingle something, swallow some food, then it covers the breathing pipe, that is nothing but the trachea. So the role of the epiglottics very, very important. And some of the times a question may ask like this, that most of the times our elders give suggestion that not to talk while eating. What's the reason? So this question several times asked in the previous year's questions, that why we need to do not talk while we are eating. The reason is here that when we talk now, then the air passes from the larynx and pharynx, and this epiglottics present there in the larynx region. So if the air passes, then the air pipe opens, that is trachea open up. So when trachea open up and we are swallowing the food, then there is a chances that the food may enter into the air pipe. So that's the reason that we may get choking while eating the food, and it may stuck into the trachea air pipe, and it may causes the several infections as well. So that's the scientific reason behind the suggestions of the elders, that every time we have to follow the suggestions to live a happy life. Okay, now? So make sure that you have to learn compulsory the role of epiglottics while eating. Now the next thing is esophagus. So as you see, the esophagus is made up of two kinds of the muscles, circular muscles, longitudinal muscles. Now these sentences, remember what I am going to be say here. When the circular muscles contract, once again, when the circular muscles contract, then it makes the narrowness within the tube. So this narrowness push the bolus towards downside. Now next thing, the relaxation of the longitudinal muscles makes the tube. In cases there is a contraction, I am discussing contraction. Okay, now the first case, contraction of the upper muscles, that is the circular muscles, narrow, make the narrow tube that push the bolus, and the contraction of the longitudinal muscles make the widened tube. So why I am repeating here, this is one of the things that many of the students ask me to say once again, so I repeat it here. So remember that here contraction and here also contraction. You get confusion to say the relaxation of the muscles is longitudinal muscles is the same like the circular muscles. So make sure of it. Now the next important thing in this chapter is that bolus and the chyme. Okay, you need to be learn the differences in between the bolus and the chyme. So bolus is nothing but after the proper mastication, whatever the food is going to be chewed properly, that is within the buccal cavity, it's nothing but the bolus. Okay, now actually here within the bolus carbohydrates get digested, and it is basic in nature. Why? Because saliva is basic in nature. And the next thing, within the stomach, the chyme, after the digestion, the chyme, okay, it is the food is known to be as the chyme. Why? Because here the protein digestion start and the complete grinding of the food takes place, and it is acidic in nature. Why? Because gastric juice release which contains the HCl. So HCl is very concentrated acid they release in our stomach, so that is why it is acidic in nature. So you need to be aware of the differences in between the bolus and the chyme. Okay, now bolus is the thing where the carbohydrates get digested, and the chyme is the thing where the proteins are get digested. And bolus is basic in nature due to saliva, and chyme is acidic in nature due to gastric acid. Now the next important thing is the stomach as a digester, or stomach as a pouch like, not tube like. Okay, The stomach shows the three kinds of the main movements, that is grinding, okay na, that is grinding, and the propulsion and the retropulsion. The propulsion means what? Whenever the bolus enter into the stomach, it passes from the one region to another region. That is the first thing that is known to be as the propulsion. It is a kind of the peristaltic movement within the stomach. Now, the next thing is grinding. What does mean by grinding? When the bolus enters into the stomach, it need to be get mixed properly with the HCl for the complete churning of the food, and it need to be mixed with the proteins, pepsin, so that the proteins are going to be grind completely or get digested within the stomach itself. So that's the reason that the vigorous peristaltic movements takes place within the stomach, that is known to be as the grinding. And the third peristaltic movement in the stomach is known to be as the retropulsion. Stomach get open into the duodenum. This region is known to be as the duodenum, which opens, which is the first part of the small intestine, where the stomach sphincter, pyloric sphincter, it open into the first part of the small intestine. So what is this third one, retropulsion? The food enters into the duodenum through the sphincter, pyloric sphincter. What this pyloric sphincter do? It allows only the small amount of the chyme to enter into the duodenum and push back the most amount of the food back into the stomach. So that is the retropulsion. That is the retropulsion. So in this case, the stomach performs the three peristaltic movements. You need to be aware of it. And why? Because it performs the churning and grinding, and it stores the food for the long time. So that is why it is known to be as the pouch, or it's a digester or the grinder, etc. Okay, now you need to be aware of it. Now I have selected the two activities from this chapter that is very important. That is the to show breakdown of food by using the model of chalk paste in vinegar. Actually, this activity explains us about the mastication process. Okay, now so when we mash the food into the buccal cavity, then it can properly digest within the stomach. That we will do by taking in two chalk piece. One chalk piece we will keep in a vinegar without crushing, and another chalk piece we keep in a vinegar with crushing. So when we keep with crushing, then it can dissolve in the vinegar very easily, instead of that chalk piece that was not crushed. So it explained that the mastication is a process which helpful in the digestion. So what we learn from here, that we need to do the proper mastication, so that our stomach and the intestine should not feel difficulty for the digestion of the complete food. Now the next thing is action of saliva. It's very important that to learn about it. The action of saliva over the floor. Okay, this action of saliva over the floor explains us about that how does the saliva helpful for the digestion of the carbohydrates. Okay, now so you need to be aware of it. We are taking the two tubes which contains the solution. We are adding the saliva in one of it, and we are not adding the saliva in another one, and we are leaving for some time. Then after some time we will check the iodine test. Then we will find that in the test tube 1, in which we not added the saliva, it turns into the blue-black color or bluish black color. That is denote that it contains some of the carbohydrates. Okay, now, and the next thing, in the test tube 2, in which we added the saliva, it cannot turn into the blue-black color after adding the iodine tincture or the iodine solution within it. Okay, so it shows that the carbohydrates or the starch, whatever present within it, it gets dissolved in some water. It turns into the maltose. So this is regarding to the some of the important things from this chapter that we discussed. Moreover, one more activity is there, that is also we go through that. So learn about it and learn about the dental formula, types of the teeth, etc.